This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you. And for the first hour today, we will have Congressman Mark Pocan on the line with us, taking your calls, answering your questions. Pocan.house.gov, his website. You can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan, R-E-P, as in Representative Mark Pocan. Congressman, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Tom. Glad to be here.
Great to have you with us, and congratulations. I understand that you have moved from first vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus to co-chair, as Keith Ellison has moved over to the DNC. You've moved up to the top of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Do I have that right?
Yes. In fact, I think what's great news for progressives across the country is that now that we've got Keith as the deputy, chair of the DNC, we're taking the Progressive Caucus principles and expanding them into more realms. We're really glad. Keith did a tremendous job for the Progressive Caucus, still is very active in the Progressive Caucus, but now he's able to take a lot of those ideas and values and bring them to the DNC. So I'm stepping up, and Raul Grijalva and I are going to co-chair, and we're going to keep doing what we've been doing, I think, so well, is really trying to be the legislative arm of the resistance in Washington, D.C. That is great.
And, for our listeners, you're going to be with us for the whole hour, taking their calls. The number is 202-808-9925. Marty Kurzweil sent me his favorite headlines this morning. I think he made this one up. It's from the Daily Montana Unfake News. But here it is. Special Montana congressional candidate poignantly demonstrates the shortcomings of Obamacare by sending pesky English reporter directly to the hospital.
Yeah.
So, I know that I don't know if the Progressive Caucus is involved, but I know that, Our Revolution, Bernie's group, and the Indivisible groups are involved with the election that's happening today in Montana. Any thoughts on that, or on Mr. Gianforte?
The millionaire from out east.
Yeah, this out-of-state multimillionaire in Montana, yeah.
Right.
Rob Quist is the Democrat running against him. Anyhow, any thoughts on that?
Well, to me, I think the big thing for us to look at, this would be great if we picked it up, right? I think it would give everyone that boost they need. But honestly, intelligently, you got to look at where we were previously with a Democrat and where we're going to be now with this candidate. When you see these 15 to 20-point swings in the electorate in districts that we probably weren't very competitive in previously, what that's got to tell everyone is now when you get to 2018, if we can sustain what we as a movement, and not a moment, but a movement are doing in the country right now as the progressives and standing out against this Trump agenda, if we can continue it into 2018, think of those districts where someone won last time by 5 points and they're a Republican seat, and we're moving districts by 15 points. We're going to have a whole lot of a playing field where not only can we pick up seats and elect Democrats, but I would argue we can elect progressives to then be those nominees so that we can elect more progressives to Congress. So regardless of what happens today, we would love, obviously, to pick up that seat. The fact that we're watching these huge swings in votes, that more people are not enamored by the Trump agenda and Paul Ryan's agenda, that this is a real chance for us to build a strong movement in this country.
Yeah. Paul Ryan was just on TV holding a press conference in which he said that the cost of that, according to the CBO, the part of the CBO report that he wanted to talk about was that from the introduction of Obamacare until today, the average premiums have doubled, and they've gone up by more than $3,000. And, I don't know the veracity of that. I don't know if there's a codicil, a qualifier attached to it. I know that Iowa is a great example of what would happen if you did away with Obamacare, because Iowa has basically, the Republicans in Iowa took the Obamacare waivers throughout the entire process, so that in Iowa you don't have to buy on the exchange. In fact, they never set up an exchange. You can buy in the private marketplace, and you can buy policies that are not Obamacare compliant. And young, healthy people have been doing that, buying cheaper policies that don't cover basically everything that could ever happen to them, because odds are nothing is going to happen because they're young and healthy. And that has been throwing riskier people into the Obamacare pool, which has caused the health insurance companies to basically flee Iowa. This is sabotage by the Republicans. This, the risk corridors being done away with by Marco Rubio. Trump now saying he's going to withhold the $7 billion payments to the insurance companies to reimburse them for the subsidies, the Obamacare subsidies, the efforts to do away with the almost 4% tax on capital gains that funds these subsidies. What's going on here? What are your thoughts on all this?
Well, this is political misdirection at its strongest, right? What they're trying to say is rather than take something that gave 20 million people access to health insurance, that ensured someone with a pre-existing condition could get health insurance, to make sure that people don't have a lifetime cap, because if you're sick, to make sure that women are paying the same as men, to make sure that adult children are staying on to their parents' policies until they're 26. In order to do all these things, we got that out of the Affordable Care Act, and we can improve where it does have some issues by doing things like creating a public option, which is what we wanted to do in the House side anyway in the very beginning. And there's other things we can do that don't have to throw tens of millions of people off of their health insurance. So the false equivalency, the misdirection they're giving you is, yes, are there some problems with the Affordable Care Act? Yes. Are they exaggerating them and twisting them? Absolutely. But their answer is to give a $600 billion tax cut to the wealthiest in this country, insurance companies, big pharma, and then to kick 23 million people off of insurance. But what also came out of this CBO score that they couldn't wait for is that you're going to have huge increases. What they're saying now is you're going to lose 14 million people by 2018 off of their health care, and then premiums are expected to increase by 20% more under the current law because of the provisions they're doing. So by allowing this pre-existing condition efforts they're working on, they're guessing that 1 out of every 6 Americans will live in a state that will apply for a waiver to get rid of some of these key Obamacare provisions. So he's not going to talk about 99% of that CBO report. He's going to twist and turn 1%. But the bottom line is you could fix the current law without having to throw it away and do what they're doing. What they're doing, again, is just taking care of their wealthy benefactors, and that's all their bill did.
Right, and sticking it to the rest of us. Michael in Los Angeles, watching us on Free Speech TV. You are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning, Congressman.
Morning.
My issue is pretty much the same. How are we going to take the Congress and Senate back when they're taking away our votes? Okay, down in Alabama, only are they taking away the votes, but when people go to register, they're not even putting them on the voter rolls. Have y'all been addressing that? Have you been seeing that?
Yeah, Michael, absolutely. We've talked on this program about interstate cross-check, and in fact, we have the final bill. We're just lining up our original sponsors on it to directly address some of the issues around interstate cross-check so that they can't just throw people off. We're making standards and conditions they have to. Now, I can introduce that, and we can help raise that debate again, but let's face it, who's in charge of Congress right now? It's the Republicans in charge of the House and the Senate that have largely been complicit with all these states that have done everything they can to throw people off the voter rolls. So it still has to be from the grassroots up. We're still going to have to fight these issues, but now we're going to have a vehicle, a congressional bill, directly at that issue. But we also have congressional bills on a constitutional amendment to guarantee a right to vote, to change some of the other problems that we've seen around photo ID and ending early voting. So we know that's an absolute crucial part of it. We have to make sure everyone can vote. The more people who do, they agree with us on the issues. Let's just make it so this is a real democracy, and we've got to fight every attack along the way.
Congressman, BBC and Rolling Stone reporter Greg Palast was telling me last night, he's on his way down to Georgia right now, and he said, I believe it was the Supreme Court, maybe it was one of the appeals courts, but in any case, forced them to extend voter registration for the special election that John Ossoff is running in. Mm-hmm. In where I used to live, actually, in the Georgia 6th District. Newt used to be my congressman. And the court said you must extend early registration, but the state is not funding the people who enter the names who registered into the voter database. So all of those people who are early registering right now will not show up as voters when they show up to vote, will not be allowed to vote. So they're complying with the court order, but they're not complying with the spirit of the court order, which is mind-boggling. And,
and I hope that this is getting another court injunction in order to try to do something about it.
Greg thinks it's too late, but we'll find out more about it. But it speaks to this larger issue of, like in Montana right now, Montana, you don't even have to show photo ID to vote, even though it's a red state. The same thing with North Dakota. Why is that? Well, not a lot of black people, right?
Right.
Not a lot of people of color. But in Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, the old Confederacy, you got to show.
Throw in Wisconsin, Tom.
Yeah, well, Wisconsin, is kind of the anomaly to that. Yeah, absolutely. And so anyhow, we got about 30 seconds before you hit the break here. Your thoughts on voter suppression?
I've been dealing with this since I was in the state legislature. I used to be on our campaigns and elections committee. This is clearly a manufactured issue. One of the rare PolitiFact truths that I got one time was when I said you're more likely to get struck by lightning than commit in-person voter fraud, and they had to say it was true because it matches the statistics. And yet, look at all the talk about voter fraud.
Yeah,
that's the fraud.
Yeah, in fact, I think 700 or 800 people a year get struck by lightning, and they find maybe a dozen or something like that nationwide out of billions of votes. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls. More right after this. Stick around.